Matthew 2, an exegetical and biblical theological commentary. Matthew chapter 2 functions as the crucial transition from the messianic identification of the Christ to the immediate world historical and spiritual conflicts surrounding his manifestation. Where the first chapter established who he is, the son of David, the son of Abraham, conceived by the Holy Spirit as Emmanuel, Matthew 2 turns to how he is received and what he does in the world. Within the overarching framework of the divine promise plan, this narrative marks a pivotal stage in the progressive unfolding of redemption. God's single unified promise to Abraham, that in his seed all families of the earth would be blessed, begins to break visibly into history through the arrival of Gentile worshippers and the recapitulation of Israel's foundational exile and Exodus narratives. The cognitive environment is thoroughly Hebraic and Second Temple Jewish, set against Roman imperial dominance and client king tyranny. A striking theological paradox emerges. Jerusalem, the holy city with the temple and the scribal guardians of the law, becomes the epicenter of paranoia, apathy, and hostility toward the Messiah. Conversely, faith, recognition, and worship arise from foreign skywatchers from the east and an obscure village in Galilee. By presenting Jesus as the true king who relives Israel's corporate history, sojourning in Egypt, surviving a pharaonic massacre, and emerging as the new Moses, Matthew shows that Jesus does not set aside God's covenantal promises to Israel. Instead, he concentrates Israel's true identity and destiny within himself to bring about the promised cosmic restoration. The narrative opens after the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem of Judea during the reign of Herod the Great. Magi from the east arrive in Jerusalem, the first explicit Gentile characters in the Gospel. These were likely Persian or Babylonian astrologers and skywatchers who combined astronomical observation with the interpretation of cosmic portents. In the ancient Near Eastern worldview, extraordinary celestial phenomena signaled the birth of divine rulers. God uses their cultural and celestial horizon to draw them to the true king. Their question, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews?" stands in sharp contrast to Herod, an Idumean client king appointed by the Roman Senate, who possessed no legitimate Davidic lineage. Herod is troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. His terror stems from ruthless paranoia about rivals. The city's anxiety reflects awareness of his violent disposition when threatened. He assembles the chief priests and scribes, who correctly cite Micah chapter 5 verse 2, combined with 2 Samuel chapter 5 verse 2, identifying Bethlehem of Ephrathah as the prophesied birthplace of the Davidic ruler. Yet this creates a profound moral indictment. The religious leaders possess structural, textual knowledge of the promise, but show zero covenantal devotion or initiative to travel the short 5 miles from Jerusalem to Bethlehem to investigate. The star guides the Magi past Jerusalem's intrigue to the child. They enter the house, not a stable, and see the child with Mary his mother. The family had settled into ordinary village accommodations. The Magi fall down and worship the child, an act of reverence for divine royalty. Their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh echo Psalm 72 and Isaiah 60, symbolizing royal tribute from the nations to the light of Israel. Warned in a dream, they depart by another route. Gentiles yield to divine revelation while political authorities plot destruction. An angel of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream. "Take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, for Herod seeks to destroy the child." Joseph's immediate obedience under cover of night evokes the Genesis Joseph who found safety in Egypt, maintaining organic continuity of God's covenantal instruments. Egypt, a Roman province outside Herod's jurisdiction with a large Jewish diaspora, offered practical refuge. Matthew notes that their stay fulfilled what the Lord spoke through the prophet Hosea. "Out of Egypt I called my son," Hosea chapter 11 verse 1. In its original context, this is historical retrospection on national Israel's exodus, where Israel is designated God's firstborn son in Exodus chapter 4. Matthew's appropriation rests on typological corporate solidarity. Jesus is the ultimate ideal Son of God who revives and fulfills Israel's corporate identity. Where national Israel failed in the wilderness, Jesus recapitulates the trajectory in absolute covenant faithfulness. Herod, realizing he has been outwitted, flies into a rage and orders the slaughter of all male children 2 years old and under in Bethlehem and its regions. In a town that size, the number slain was likely small, yet the moral atrocity is immense. The decree mirrors Pharaoh's ancient mandate against Hebrew male newborns. Herod stands in the typological role of Pharaoh. Jesus is the new Moses miraculously preserved from imperial massacre. Matthew frames the tragedy through Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 15. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be comforted because they were no more. Ramah lay near Rachel's burial site and served as the staging area for Judahite captives before the Babylonian exile. In Jeremiah 31, Rachel's lament is immediately surrounded by declarations of hope, restoration, and the announcement of the new covenant. The Messianic Advent is the beginning of the ultimate end of Israel's exile. Redemption's costly nature is laid bare. The kingdom breaks in amidst violent opposition, yet God's purpose remains unshakable. After Herod's death, an angel again commands Joseph to return to the land of Israel, echoing the language of Exodus chapter 4. Learning that Archelaus rules Judea, Joseph is warned in a third dream and withdraws to Galilee. He settles the family in Nazareth, Galilee of the Gentiles. Matthew concludes that what was spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He shall be called a Nazarene. The plural prophets signals synthesis rather than a single verbatim citation. The Hebrew root of Nazareth connects to Netzer, the branch of Isaiah chapter 11 verse 1, a shoot from the stem of Jesse. Jesus is the hidden messianic branch growing from the seemingly dead stump of the Davidic line. Nazareth's low status also fulfills the prophetic pattern that the Messiah would be humble, overlooked, and despised, as in Psalm 22 and Isaiah 53. To be called a Nazarene was to bear an obscure, lowly identity preceding exaltation. Matthew 2 is a masterclass in promise plan theology. It demonstrates the organic unity and progressive unfolding of redemptive history. God's promise plan is neither disconnected administrative eras nor abandonment of original covenantal commitments to Israel. Every major stage, the Abrahamic blessing to the nations, Josephic preservation in Egypt, the Exodus under Moses, the Davidic lineage in Bethlehem, and the grief of Babylonian exile, reaches definitive fulfillment and recapitulation in the person of Messiah Jesus. The theology is firmly non-supersessionist. The Gentile Magi do not replace ethnic Israel or erase the concrete historical reality of God's covenant with Abraham's descendants. Their worship represents the long-promised expansion of the one people of God, the nations drawn to worship the King of the Jews. Jesus stands as the concentrated representation of Israel. He embodies the nation's vocation, endures their suffering, and fulfills their calling where national Israel faltered. The passage exposes the fundamental human choices that arise when God's kingdom breaks in. One may react with the murderous self-preservation of Herod, the scholarly indifference of the Jerusalem elite, or the humble, joyful, costly worship of the foreign Magi. Human tyranny, imperial power, and political paranoia are powerless to frustrate the divine promise plan. Out of exile, out of Egypt, and out of obscure Nazareth, God brings forth.